What we've been debating here in Washington over the last few weeks will affect the lives of the students here and families all across America in potentially profound ways.
So far, President Obama is telling the truth. The economic debate in Washington will affect the lives of Americans in profound ways.
This debate over budgets and deficits is about more than just numbers on a page. It's about more than just cutting and spending. It's about the kind of future that we want. It's about the kind of country that we believe in.
Once again, Obama is telling the truth. The current debate is about more than budgets, deficits, and numbers on a page. It is about the power of the government and the freedom and the future of the American people.
From our first days as a nation, we have put our faith in free markets and free enterprise as the engine of America's wealth and prosperity. And more than citizens of any other country, we are rugged individualists, a self-reliant people with a healthy skepticism of too much government.
America's founders believed in free markets and free enterprise because they believed in freedom. These rugged, self-reliant individualists understood that if the wealth of a nation could be steered outside of the free market, it would be steered into the pockets of those doing the steering and their supporters.
But there's always been another thread running through our history, a belief that we're all connected.
Which is it, Mr. President? Are Americans free individuals, or are they all connected and bound together by their government? The collective view of society is a tenet of communism.
And that there are some things we can only do together as a nation. We believe, in the words of the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, that through government we should do together what we cannot do as well for ourselves.
The role of America's national government does not come from Abraham Lincoln. It comes from the Constitution. The Constitution only delegated the federal government a few specific powers over national necessities. It does not delegate the federal government unlimited and undefined powers over the individual conveniences or needs that some can obtain better than others.
And so we've built a strong military to keep us secure, and public schools and universities to educate our citizens. We've laid down railroads and highways to facilitate travel and commerce. We've supported the work of scientists and researchers whose discoveries have saved lives, unleashed repeated technological revolutions, and led to countless new jobs and entire new industries. Each of us has benefited from these investments, and we're a more prosperous country as a result.
The federal government only has the powers delegated to it by the Constitution. The Constitution granted the federal government the power to provide for the military, roads, and the useful arts. None of these things, including the military, are what is bankrupting our nation.
Now, part of this American belief that we're all connected also expresses itself in a conviction that each one of us deserves some basic measure of security and dignity. We recognize that no matter how responsibly we live our lives, hard times or bad luck, a crippling illness or a layoff may strike any one of us. There, but for the grace of God, go I, we say to ourselves.
Does each one of us deserve a measure of security and dignity? What about those who do not live their lives responsibly and are unwilling to work for these things? What about criminals and predators who take the security, dignity, and property from their neighbors? Should the irresponsible and slothful in society be allowed to take from their neighbors using the hand of the government?
And so we contribute to programs like Medicare and Social Security, which guarantee us health care and a measure of basic income after a lifetime of hard work. Unemployment insurance, which protects us against unexpected job loss. And Medicaid, which provides care for millions of seniors in nursing homes, poor children, those with disabilities. We're a better country because of these commitments. I'll go further. We would not be a great country without those commitments.
Retirement, health care, and insurance are not things that Americans are incapable of providing for themselves, like the military or roads and bridges. Many take from government entitlement programs without having provided a lifetime of hard work. And without government entitlement programs, America would not be over $14 trillion in debt.
For much of the last century, our nation found a way to afford these investments and priorities with the taxes paid by its citizens. As a country that values fairness, wealthier individuals have traditionally borne a greater share of this burden than the middle class or those less fortunate. Everybody pays, but the wealthier have borne a little more.
How is it fair that some individuals bear a greater share of the tax burden than others? Does everybody pay? Many Americans pay no federal income tax at all and still get thousands of dollars from their neighbors in the form of an earned income tax credit. Is everyone that is less successful simply less fortunate, or could some of these individuals be less industrious or less moral?
This is not because we begrudge those who've done well. We rightly celebrate their success. Instead, it's a basic reflection of our belief that those who've benefited most from our way of life can afford to give back a little bit more. Moreover, this belief hasn't hindered the success of those at the top of the income scale. They continue to do better and better with each passing year.
President Obama is beginning to reveal his true character and why he is unconcerned with the injustice of allowing groups of people to take from their neighbors using the hand of the government. He is a demagogue, a politician who buys votes using the property rights and political rights of the people. Demagogues have led to the destruction of democracies throughout history.
Now, at certain times, particularly during war or recession, our nation has had to borrow money to pay for some of our priorities. And as most families understand, a little credit card debt isn't going to hurt if it's temporary.
In comparing the over $14 trillion national deficit to a little credit card debt, the president reveals that he will do nothing to curtail Washington's out-of-control spending that threatens the future of America's children.
And so by the time I took office, we once again found ourselves deeply in debt and unprepared for a baby boom retirement that is now starting to take place. When I took office, our projected deficit annually was more than $1 trillion. On top of that, we faced a terrible financial crisis and a recession that, like most recessions, led us to temporarily borrow even more.
Knowing that the nation is deeply in debt, with the gentrifying workforce and out-of-control entitlement spending leading to a projected annual deficit of over $1 trillion, is Obama going to cut spending and introduce reform measures?
In this case, we took a series of emergency steps that saved millions of jobs, kept credit flowing, and provided working families extra money in their pocket. It was absolutely the right thing to do. But these steps were expensive and added to our deficits in the short term.
Like a true demagogue, Obama actually increased government spending to previously unimagined levels to buy votes and pay off supporters despite knowing America's financial crisis.
Some of you might be wondering, why is this so important? Why does this matter to me? Well, here's why. Even after our economy recovers, our government will still be on track to spend more money than it takes in throughout this decade and beyond. That means we'll have to keep borrowing more from countries like China. That means more of your tax dollars each year will go towards paying off the interest on all the loans that we keep taking out. By the end of this decade, the interest that we owe on our debt could rise to nearly $1 trillion. Think about that. That's the interest, just the interest payments. Then, as the baby boomers start to retire in greater numbers and healthcare costs continue to rise, the situation will get even worse. By 2025, the amount of taxes we currently pay will only be enough to finance our healthcare programs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the interest we owe on our debt. That's it. Every other national priority, education, transportation, even our national security, will have to be paid for with borrowed money. Now, ultimately, all this rising debt will cost us jobs and damage our economy. It will prevent us from making the investments we need to win the future. New research or the repair of roads. All the things that create new jobs and businesses here in America. Businesses will be less likely to invest and open shop in a country that seems unwilling or unable to balance its books. And if our creditors start worrying that we may be unable to pay back our debts, that could drive up interest rates for everybody who borrows money, making it harder for businesses to expand and hire or families to take out a mortgage.
Social Security and Medicare are government pyramid/Ponzi schemes. Politicians bought votes with government entitlement programs using taxes paid by an ever-expanding population base. The money taken for Social Security has already been spent and replaced with government bonds, IOUs. With effective birth control now widely available and America's birth rate barely at replacement levels, these pyramid schemes are in danger of collapsing.
So because all this spending is popular with both Republicans and Democrats alike, and because nobody wants to pay higher taxes, politicians are often eager to feed the impression that solving the problem is just a matter of eliminating waste and abuse. You'll hear that phrase a lot. We just need to eliminate waste and abuse. The implication is that tackling the deficit issue won't require tough choices. Or politicians suggest that we can somehow close our entire deficit by eliminating things like foreign aid, even though foreign aid makes up about 1% of our entire federal budget.
Waste and abuse are the hallmarks of government entitlement programs. Politicians who buy votes do not try to exclude people that abuse these programs because they want their votes. This is the reason why politicians allow those who are able-bodied and capable of providing for themselves to prey on their productive and responsible neighbors.
So here's the truth. Around 2/3 of our budget, 2/3, is spent on Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and national security. 2/3. Programs like unemployment insurance, student loans, veterans benefits, and tax credits for working families take up another 20%. What's left, after interest on the debt, is just 12% for everything else. That's 12% for all of our national priorities: education, clean energy, medical research, transportation, our national parks, food safety, keeping our air and water clean, you name it. All of that accounts for 12% of our budget.
The vast majority of the money spent by the federal government is spent on things responsible people can and should provide for themselves: retirement, health care, insurance, loans, cash payments, tax credits for those that don't pay taxes, and benefits. Government social programs have become vote-buying mechanisms fraught with waste and abuse.
Now, up till now, the debate here in Washington, the cuts proposed by a lot of folks in Washington, have focused exclusively on that 12%. But cuts to that 12% alone won't solve the problem. So any serious plan to tackle our deficit will require us to put everything on the table and take on excess spending wherever it exists in the budget.
After acknowledging the dire consequences of the national deficit and the fact that the deficit was caused by excess spending on entitlement programs, is Obama going to support efforts to cut government spending?
A serious plan doesn't require us to balance our budget overnight. In fact, economists think that with the economy just starting to grow again, we need a phased-in approach. But it does require tough decisions and support from our leaders in both parties now. Above all, it will require us to choose a vision of the America we want to see 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road.